In 2017, I created Hunter's Moon, a werewolf hunting endless runner for Android and Windows. Now, nearly a decade later, I'm working on Hunter's Moon 2, Dark Moon, which is a roguelike with a significantly more complicated gameplay loop and bigger scope when compared with the first game. The first game was intended to be played with a single thumb on a touchscreen. Outside of combat, you constantly move to the right. You tap and hold anywhere on the screen to jump, avoid traps, and collect gold. When you encounter a werewolf, you battle it by tapping the top half of the screen to defend and the bottom half to attack. It's fairly simple. In Dark Moon, you fight hordes of enemies, gain powers, and get to move right and left. You can jump, of course, and have a few different attacks and a dodge as well. Despite the two games playing quite differently, I reused and altered many of the sprites from the original game to be used in Dark Moon. Hi, my name's Seb, and I thought it could be interesting to go over some of the changes between these two games and the thought that went into them. Dark Moon is a lot more zoomed out than Hunter's Moon 1, and the hunter, who I've named Korai, though you wouldn't know it from just playing the original as his name is never mentioned in it, is centered in the middle of the screen, along with the moon sprite. Notably, the moon is also larger now than in Hunter's Moon 1. All of these changes were made because in Dark Moon, Korai can move right and left. In Hunter's Moon 1, Korai is aligned to the left side of the screen, because you're always running and jumping to the right. You never have to look behind you, and that placement allows you to look as far ahead as possible in the direction you're going. This is pretty basic design, but it means that the player gets a reasonable amount of time to react to oncoming obstacles without wasting too much screen space on unhelpful information. In Dark Moon, you might want to move in any direction at a moment's notice, so zooming the camera out and centering Korai in the middle of the screen allows the player to see what they need to see. The moon is larger because I wanted to maintain the style from the first game, where the player's silhouette is almost always completely engulfed by the moon. But I still wanted to have a camera that trails behind the player smoothly. With a camera like that, Korai doesn't actually stay completely centered on the screen at all times. If the moon were smaller, he'd leave its radius when the camera was trying to catch up to him. Korai's sprites have also been altered. In the original game, for example, when you entered combat, you were unable to move or jump. The only thing you could do was attack or block. This meant I could make animations that would never transition to or from Korai's running or jumping animations. And I even created a different combat stance for him to assume whenever you would encounter a werewolf. In Dark Moon, this isn't the case. I need attack animations that are snappy and can seamlessly transition between standing, running, and jumping. Not only that, but the shape of the swing actually matters in Dark Moon, because it is mapped to a hitbox that is used to detect whether or not you've hit an enemy. In the original game, combat was all about timing. Positioning was not a factor at all, so I created new attack animations to fit the new gameplay style. I also adjusted his idle animation to have more frames, making the cape flow a little more smoothly, and to add some motion to his shoulders, indicating breathing. His jumping animation has had a massive glow up in my opinion. The original animation was totally serviceable. I like the way his body moves as he jumps. I feel like it really sells the action. However, I feel like his cape flies in a kind of jerky motion, and ends up sticking straight up in a way that looks off to me when he's falling at maximum speed. In Dark Moon, I reworked the first part of the jumping animation to have a subtler and smoother cape animation. And this time when he reaches his maximum fall speed, rather than holding on a single frame, he transitions into a new looping animation where his cape and limbs continue to move smoothly. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Maybe one of the most interesting animation changes for Korai between the two games, at least to me, is his run cycle. Technically, Korai's running animation from Hunter's Moon 1 appears in Dark Moon exactly as it did in the original. However, in Dark Moon, there is a second animation that plays for a moment whenever Korai starts moving, or turns around. The only difference between these animations is the cape movement, where in the new animation the cape is dragging behind the hunter with more weight. I only added this because when I first started work on Dark Moon using the original animations for Korai, I found that changing directions looked a little silly, with his cape instantly shooting out horizontally. The werewolves from the original game also have their animations reused and altered to fit the new game. Currently, the only finished werewolf enemies in Darkmoon are zombie werewolves, who have a skull instead of a wolf head. Aside from that, the main change to their sprites for Darkmoon is the addition of some detail on the bottom of their paws. In the original game, they never left the flat ground, so making the bottom of their sprite totally flat worked fine. In Darkmoon, they now have claws on their feet, which I added to make them look a little more three-dimensional when standing on a slope or falling through the air. Those are some of the most interesting changes between Hunter's Moon 1 and 2, in my opinion. Of course, the gameplay itself is completely different, but it's these subtle animation tweaks that I made to fit the new design that I thought were most interesting to talk about in depth. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, please like it, comment, and subscribe to follow along with more Darkmoon related devlogs. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And as always, have a great day.